Coach, it's doubly good to have you in the office or in the house tonight. Number one, always good to be around. Number two, yesterday was Memorial Day,
Yes.
and I want to just thank you for your service. You're fighting a battle here on the streets of Little Rock on a daily, but you also fought for this country, and I'm thankful to be a friend of
Yes. Thank you. And for bringing that up. And, service.
yours.
Yeah. I just really believe the military has so many positive benefits to serve. And, wake up thinking about the opportunities to serve. And remember, John Fitzgerald just say, that's not what you can do for your country. That's not what the country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And I think that's the mindset. That if we had that mindset, there would be no need for sure.
Absolutely. We get that golden rule of Jesus. Do unto others as you have them do to you. I mean, that whole concept. Okay, it's kind of like we talk about. If we could just get a few of those 10 commitments down,
No question.
things go away in this world. It is crazy the days we are living in, how far we've gotten from God. I did read a statistic this weekend that there are more men buying Bibles and downloading Bibles than there have been in the last 20 years.
That's awesome.
They said that they're not necessarily professing something, but they're seeking.
Right.
And
maybe not going to church.
Right.
I mean, and so maybe that's the online piece of having the opportunities to be able to download the Bible, and go to church. I mean, I challenged a young man the other day. He was funny. It's very interesting. He's in big fraternity meetings, and the big time in one is fraternities and stuff. And so, he never missed any of those meetings and goes to all the conventions and stuff. And then I asked him, well, where you go to church? He said, I go to church online. I said, well, you ever thought about just going to conventions online? You ever just, and I said, no, really. I said, so you like the unity of your fraternity, right? I said, you can get that in church too, if you're at the right church. Yep. I say, so now you just want to sit up here Sunday morning, sit up here and go online. But then when it's, so just tell your frat brothers that next time you have meetings, you just hey, everybody just do virtual. We just do Zoom, And he just kind of looked at me, he just thought about it. I mean, because,
learn behavior.
Learn behavior. And there was another deal. I know Bishop needs to pray for over the show tonight, but I thought this was so profound. It says that to change our world, if we mandated that our kids go to church rather than go to school, it would change the tide of our country.
Wow.
So see, we make our kids go to school.
Mm-hmm. We don't make them go to
church.
Yeah.
So, but I'm saying we put more emphasis on going to school. So now mom's gonna make sure, get up, do everything. But it says if we want to change the tide of our country, if we put that same type of emphasis on, if everybody said no on Sunday, you got to find I got all that, because when I'm speaking to somebody said, well, church this, church here, church. I say, I said, it's just like driving a car. You just don't go get in a car. You drive the car to the one you like, right?
Right.
Bishop, pray us up so we can get going tonight.
God, we are grateful and we are thankful and we are mindful. Thank you for the great things that you blessed the coach to do, just going out and just bringing young men to the city to help further their education and just pouring hope into their lives. We pray that you would bless our time together tonight, that we can be an inspiration and empower, equip our community even the more to get in the game to save these Black boys' lives. It's in your great name, Jesus. We pray, thank God, and amen.
Amen. And as always, we like to start off with the why we do what we do. It's about the hungry. Arkansas continues to be ranked the hungriest state in America. School is out, and so many of our kids, they need us. Yes. By us, that means you, me, everyone, to step in the gap, make sure they're getting fed this summer. It's about the widow. The United States has the world's highest rate of children living in single-parent households. When summer's out and these kids have to be left at home alone, once again, it's up to us as loving our neighbor, stepping in, checking in on those kiddos, making sure they got what they need so that they're not out in the world looking for something. It's about the orphan, 391,000 children in the U.S. living in the foster care system, 4,000 of them right here in Arkansas. It's about poverty. More than 38 million Americans live in poverty, with the majority of them being children of color. In Arkansas, we have a problem. We've got 17,000 kids who are identified as homeless by our schools. That means they don't know where they're sleeping that night. They don't know where they're eating that day. We've got to step in once again and make sure that we are the good shepherd for these young kids. The addicted, half of people over 12 have used illicit drugs. Over 40,000 people die every year from overdosing. We know that when summer hits, not only are kids out roaming the streets getting into more trouble, but drugs is one of those that they're introduced to at a young age. It's about the prisoner. The U.S. leads the world in the total number of incarcerations with more than 2 million people. We know that all these behaviors, when left unchecked, when left in a vacuum, lead our young people down that path towards prison. At every Arkansan, our vision is to see more people chasing their God-given dreams. Far too often those dreams are sidelined because of the zip code you're born in more than anything else. So we are blessed to be able to host First and 45 with Coach Fitz Hill. All these facts I just mentioned are contributing factors to one factor that we just know that we have to change. The number one cause of death for a Black male age 0 to 44 is homicide. It's not car accidents, not cancer, not heart disease. We will see as the heat rises this summer, we will hear more about shootings. We will see more of it in the news. And more often than not, it's our young kids that are getting dragged down this path. And it just breaks my heart, every last one of these kids that could have been something, just tromped out early on in life. And Coach, there was an article last week that I was reading of a young girl who just finished up high school. And based upon her high school records, her GPA and all that, she got into the University of Connecticut. Problem is that once she got there, it became clear to everyone she was illiterate. She got into college, but she was illiterate. She used voice to text on her phone to write her papers. She used an app on her phone that she could scan her books and her papers and read it back to her. She was pretty smart at figuring out ways around this, but she had made it all the way through high school. And she said that she has told teachers that she couldn't read, and they still just moved her along. In that same story, they shared a kid in Kentucky who graduated high school with a 3.4 GPA. And he joined the military. And when you join the military, you have to take the ASVAB. Mm-hmm. He scored a 7. They got in there and look, he couldn't read. So 2 kids, 2 different states. Both these kids had IEPs. So that meant that they were supposed to be getting special attention to help move them along and move them forward, that they didn't get. Both the kids are suing their schools that they graduated from right now, their high schools. And it's just really, really interesting to me, the fact that these kids are illiterate. And I mean, you tell a story of right when COVID happened, young man that you discovered was illiterate in 5th grade. He
was going to the 5th grade.
Going into 5th grade. I mean, illiterate, couldn't even write his name. And
couldn't bought the shoe. Somebody sent him shoes off a social media piece, took him the shoes. I said, hey, write a thank you letter. I said, here's what you write. I wrote it down, gave it to him, the pen and paper, and told him to put it in his own handwriting. He couldn't write it. It was like, thank you for this gift, and signed his name. He couldn't write it at all.
And a good kid. I mean, a kid that you want to help.
I got to help.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, but to this point, this goes back to the first 1,000 days. All right. This is what we're always talking about. And that kid didn't just become illiterate that day.
Right.
There were social determinants that dictated the current situation that was facing him, the things that he had no control over, but he would suffer because of it. And because the first 1,000 days, based on the environment the young man was living in, okay, they're, just like, it's almost like profiling a serial killer.
Right.
Okay. So the facts that I've been looking at over the last, 10 years, really, it's been that I really got into this really heavily is that these individuals, there are really 7 factors that we say that lead to this type of situation. Now, he's like on step 3 or 4, and he's not the only one, but I'm saying that's the one I identified, and it just crushed me. I still have that today. I kept that. In fact, I saw it a few months ago when I was looking to clean up my house, clean up stuff in my house, and I kept that letter where he couldn't write, because I just wrote it for him and sent it on in because he couldn't write. And so to realize this is not an anomaly. And this is what you're showing, because most people are embarrassed by it and they don't want to discuss it and don't want to talk about it. So, you take that kid and say, what is the situation? Okay. More than likely born to a teenage mother. Okay. No father. Those are 2 things. Nutrition, all the things that we're talking about. And so then he gets into 1st grade and then he's stereotyped.
Yep.
Okay. So now he's put in group 3. All right. This is how it works.
I'm laughing because I know how ridiculous it really is working.
That's what I'm saying. This is how it works. So he's in group 3. And so that means your expectations are different. Okay. That means that you're not held accountable. And so they realize you group 1, you group 2, you group 3. Then what that means is later on, okay, after that, you go into special ed.
Yep.
Okay. And that means that your expectations are not normal as other people, because they are labeling you as a situation and saying that you're challenged learning.
Yeah. I mean, both these kids had high 3-point GPAs, but if you've got an IEP, more than likely you are in a special ed program. And so the GPA does not represent that you are learning.
Right. Functional illiterate is what they are.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, we've seen advancements in technology, education, but we've got a significant portion of our population that are functionally illiterate.
Right. That's why when we have received young people at Arkansas Baptist College who definitely couldn't read either. And so my focus is for that student at that component for the next 1 year is to learn to do 3 things: read comprehensively, write effectively, and speak efficiently. That's it. Now, I'm not worried about college algebra.
No,
nor
should you be. I mean,
and so let's get back to the fundamentals for this child, for this student, and then we can build a basis point. But we don't need to send the kid back. So now that's why having an adult education program, having these things to bring people back in, which the mission of the school was in 1884. When the former slaves came off the plantation, this was the exact same thing that happened. They didn't suspend them. They didn't push them away. They brought them in. The school was started. Old Main is where they were going to come in and teach them to read, write, and think. That's it.
And honestly, when you look at the education system, those 3 things.
That's it. That's all.
Are the basis of success.
And I know people will flip about college algebra. Business mind, good.
Balance your check.
Balance your checkbook. What's your market? What's the interest rate? Functional material.
Yep.
Who gonna use algebra?
I'm going to use algebra, but I'm a weird one that way. But hey, guys, it's the end of the first quarter. This is First and 45 with Coach Fitzfield. Don't go anywhere. We're talking about literacy. You don't want to miss it.
Hey guys, Drew here, and for the last 11 years, we've worked together to build the Arkansas Dream Center. And over those years, things have grown, opportunities have happened, but we've continued to focus on that mission of every Arkansan chasing their God-given dream. And for that very reason, Our corporation is actually known as Every Arkansan Inc. We have two ministries that really work together in tandem to see that mission take place. We have the Arkansas Dream Center, which is going out and we're reaching out to the communities. We're in those communities with mobile trucks. We're doing after school, we're feeding, we're doing all those things you know us for doing. But in addition, we realize that the church is the answer to a lot of society's problems, and there's one on every corner. So we have City Serve that comes along the side of the church, and they provide the resources. They provide furniture and clothing and diapers and all these things to the local churches so they can reach out to their neighbors. And together, when those two start to mesh, we're going out and we're bringing the churches alongside of them, and we're equipping and we're resourcing those churches. We can truly empower the local church with the resources they need to strengthen relationships in their communities. And that's what our vision is for Every Arkansan Inc. And we're so glad you're a part of it.
In 45 with Coach Fitzgill. We opened up first, we were talking about functional illiteracy. And so just for you guys that are out there, functional illiteracy refers to the inability to read, write, or comprehend information at a level necessary for everyday tasks. We're not talking about people reading old Hebrew or Greek and studying the Bible. We're just talking about just reading to get by, reading menus on the screen, things like that. You think about it. Why do they put pictures on every one of those menus? Because so many people can't read. Right now in 2024, 21% of U.S. adults were classified as illiterate, with 54% reading below the 6th grade level. When I write fundraising appeals and all of that for Every Arkansan Coach, I was actually trained that you write at a 3rd to 4th grade level because most people don't like reading anything above a 6th grade level. The connection,
the TV, the copy is TV. It's 7th, 8th grade level.
Yes. The connection between low literacy rates and crime is super well documented. And that's why I bring this up. The Department of Justice has highlighted that over 70% of inmates in American prisons cannot read above a 4th grade level. Furthermore, 85% of juveniles interacting in the court system are functionally illiterate. Illiteracy often leads to limited employment opportunities, fostering environments where they're forced to go take on illegal activities because they're viable alternatives. That's a group of people that will accept them, that will give them the chance, all that. Without the ability to read or write proficiently, individuals face barriers in accessing education. We just talked about this young man with a 3.4 GPA, wants to go into the military, can't get in because he's got a 7 on his ASVAB. He can't read. Without that ability to read or write, I mean, they're not going to get jobs. They're not going to be able to participate fully in society. This marginalization also results in frustration, low self-esteem, and in some cases, criminal behavior. And once again, when we look at the most proficient GED program in our state has got to be the Arkansas Department of Community Corrections.
No question.
They are pumping out young men and women with GEDs. The repercussions of functional illiteracy extend beyond individual challenges economically. Low literacy skills cost the U.S. about $2.2 trillion annually due to decreased productivity, higher healthcare costs, increased reliance on social welfare programs, and the such. Socially, communities with high illiteracy rates often experience elevated crime rates, perpetuating cycles of poverty and violence. Children of illiterate parents are more likely to struggle academically, increasing their risk of dropping out and encountering the criminal justice system. So we're talking about second generation here.
Correct.
So we're talking about the sins of the father going forward, and that's what we've entrusted our public school system to take care of this. We've got a private school system. We've got a charter school. We've got all these school systems, but somewhere we're missing the boat with these children just on reading.
Well, one thing we have to look at, and I've learned this during my 7-year tenure on the State Board of Education, is many times we're putting a lot of pressure on the teachers in the fundamental baseline for what we need to educate our kids did not come in the door when it came from home. And so in many cases, not only are we trying to teach children, we're trying to raise children. And for that reason, the suspension level has increased because those kids can't sit still in school because the first 1,000 days has really been the baseline for their behavior. So there's so many things going up, this happening. And I just take it, for example, my grandson is getting ready to start kindergarten. So he tested into a top first pre-K school, all right? Because I know how much time my daughter has spent teaching him to read. And you
need to rephrase pre-K teaching him to read.
No, that's exactly right.
This didn't wait until he started kindergarten.
No, that's what I'm saying. Ever since it's going on. I mean, and so the things that the investments, and when I see that, of course I'm proud of it, but we realize that's the expectation. But she had education, and so the same way that's been passed down to in a positive way. To your point, that's passed down in a negative way when a family doesn't
absolutely have that. And then when your grandson gets to school and that teacher says, well, you need to learn this, your grandbaby is going to say, well, mama's going to agree with them because mama's been telling me I got to learn this from the get-go. Versus now when we've got parents that are no longer engaged because number one, because they missed out on their education. They don't see a value in it because they didn't get to participate in the system the way it is. They're not supporting the teachers.
Correct.
And then, as you kind of said, we're putting expectations on our kids to learn all kinds of other stuff when they can't even get the basics.
No question.
I mean, you're talking about when I can't remember how you worded it with the young man that we talked about that you had met a few summers back, but he didn't even know his alphabet.
Yeah. And
I mean, that's something that in preschool we all should have learned.
Yep. I mean, and you learn that through rhymes, A, B, C. I mean, there are certain things, but to understand what a person is capable of, all you have to do when I talk about a person can't read, but they can rap. I mean, it's just it's where the emphasis is taking place and the expectation that's placed on a child. But it's so important after reading that book, First 1,000 Days, to understand how the brain is wired based on being read to for a child, the environment, a child born into trauma, because when the mother is in trauma, it goes to the child.
Exactly.
And so understanding the environments, the communities, dangerous things that we hear, and when a child grows up and violence is normal, then that's what that child expects to be normal. And so when you put that child in the classroom situation and you want that child to be quiet or to be that's not normal for him. And so you're asking that child to do something that's not that cognitive behavior is not recognized.
Hadn't been trained.
Trained. And so now we want sit down, be quiet. Well, he doesn't have to do that.
No. Well, and when you're asking a child to sit down and be quiet and all that, more than likely it's because they've lost complete interest in the system. In so many of those cases, because they're not following anymore, they're not tracking.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think the ingenuity of the young girl that was on here that was talking about she could read because she would just scan something with her phone and have her phone read it to her. She could write because she would speak to text. And then it said that she would have it read it back to her so she would know that it said the right thing. And so we're not talking that our kids are dumb.
No,
we're talking they're actually fairly intelligent.
That's emotional genius.
Exactly. They're figuring ways around it out. But the problem starts, like you said, it starts way earlier when we miss the boat, and then all of a sudden these young kids are no longer like the others. They fall, like you said, group 1, group 2, group 3. Yep. And when they get stereotyped into group 3, when they get stereotyped into the behavioral issues, when they get stereotyped, I mean, as you've kind of said, there used to not be special ed,
right?
In a lot of these schools. When we start to put kids into these buckets and put them there, the problem is they oftentimes just sit there,
right?
And I mean, I think when you look at, I don't know if you remember going out on an old farm and there'd be buckets of old, rusty, nasty water that was just stale. That's these kids' life. Mm-hmm. When there's not fresh water flowing into it, it becomes the Dead Sea. These kids become dead kids. They no longer value life. They no longer value the same things that we value as a society, because they've been left behind. They've been left there to fester. They've been left there to suffer and to struggle, versus that living water being able to be poured into them. Because, I mean, when you look at historical, how in the world did the slave master try to hold the slave back? Mm-hmm. Don't read. That's exactly don't right. Write. We are doing the same thing to a generation of kids. And this is, when I say we're all part of this, because we can all be part of the solution. Yep. And we've got a generation of kids that know no better. And when you look at it, I mean, I can't tell you how many kids, everything that they're learning is coming from TikTok. And I couldn't tell you, but I mean, it's 30 to 40% of the stuff I see on TikTok anymore. There's no way it's true.
Yeah.
And these kids are believing it. And they're seeing the life of these rappers and these people, personas that are stage personas, just like a TV actor. And they're saying, well, that's what I want. I want all that.
But, and then you throw AI on top of it. And then you have really, really just increased everything through a figment of imagination.
Exactly. And for so many of these young people, they're going to be trapped there, and they're either going to fall in between every crack and nook and cranny and go nowhere, or just like Jesus reached down and pulled us up out of the mud and said, "You are my child." I think of walking on water. I mean, Peter steps out of that boat and he starts to sink because he's doing it on his own. Yeah, but when Jesus grabbed his hand, and that's what we've got to look at with so many of these kids that aren't reading proficiently, that aren't succeeding in school, and say, man, come on up. Let's do this.
We have to change this situation. What we do know, if we continue to doing the same thing will happen. And so we have to be radical in transforming the opportunities for our children, because what we see is the reason we continue to build prisons. And so we must eradicate these crises that we see by coming up with different solutions. And if we don't, then how do we sit here and answer ourselves to say, okay, something want to be better? And what I'm excited about, that we're talking about it, but we can ready to try something now. I don't know what's gonna happen.
We ain't running our mouth.
We're not running now. We can put
the ball on the field.
We can ready to try something. And at least, like I said, and you talking about war, like my old platoon sergeant, when I was in ROTC, when I was leading a patrol, and I stopped when the ambush came in, and he came up to me, grabbed my tags off my deal, so I got to send these home. He said, because now, he said, you're dead. He said, you just stopped in the middle of an ambush. He said, if you had at least moved, there may have been a chance, drop, roll, do something, or to shoot at him and run. Yep. You might have made it out. He said, but you're dead. You know why? He said, you didn't do anything. So I'm saying we are dead because we're not doing anything. Yes. We have no chance to change it if we do nothing. That's exactly why we're going to be trying to change it. I think it's continue to join us here in the second half. Coach Anderson Bailey connected with, that was last year, Pine Bluff High School that was murdered. Man, they've been some great things in Pine Bluff. Now, they had fewer murders taking place, GIB down there. We're going to talk to Coach Michael Williams and Coach Anderson Bailey about the death, how this homicide virus continues to spread. We're going to have that in the second half. Stay tuned. I think it's going to be something that you're really going to be inspired by things that we're doing because of the lives that have been lost. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Black men have so many different problems, so many different issues. Homicide rate, high incarceration rate, fatherless homes. What is America going to do about it?
What are we going to do about it? Yeah, what are we going to do about it? When I say we, I'm talking to black men. I'm asking us, what are we going to do about issues that negatively impact black men and boys to a greater degree than other demographics? Everybody knows about the homicide epidemic in this country regarding black men and boys. While comprising only 6% of the nation's population, will account for 50% of the nation's homicide victims. So what are we going to do about it? Here's another disturbing reality. While making up only 6% of the nation's population, we're about 40% of the nation's prison population. In fact, 1 in 3 black males are projected to go to jail in their lifetime. Again, I ask, what are we going to do about it? Collectively, black men have the means to solve these problems. We just don't have the mind to do so. And means without the mind.
And we're back with first and 45, ready for the second half. And we got, as Coach mentioned, just before we went to break, we got a special guest that's going to be with us. And I just want to salute you guys. And, man, you know, Coach, what you just said at the end of the break is faith without works is dead. And the summer has hit, and these kids are out of school. Pastor Drew's working, and I was just talking to him before the show started. He'll be serving over 1,500 kids this summer, making sure they got meals, making sure that that they are mentally stirred in terms of education, from an educational perspective, to just keep them, fresh throughout the summer. You, man, been hitting these different states, and
I won't be here next Tuesday. I was going to tell you I'm going to be speaking in Stuttgart. Got a call down. They've had several murders in Stuttgart, and so I'm going to be making a trip there to recruit young men. But that morning at 11 o'clock, I'll be at the prison in Pine Bluff speaking to the young men, which many of them get to listen to our show. Todd Ball, the warden, they having their I'll be speaking next month to all the wardens that's coming to the community. He listens to our show on First and 45, and so God is enlarging our territory. Because we're going to take action in trying to combat this virus that continues to spread, and it's important that we continue to bring this to the surface, and that's why. One thing, I got a call last week, Drew, from Juvenile from Alexandria, asking when we're going to come out and do the football camp again. And so we are going to do that, but I'm going to tell you who's going to do the football camp this time after we get here. The football players of Arkansas Baptist College, they're going to go out and do it. And so I'm yep, exactly right. That's going to, I'm going to let them, we're going to take them on there, and we're going to have our leaders in there. We're going to cook for everybody. Our 2 Fish 5 Loaves team, going to try to have a volleyball for the girls there. But I was telling Coach Bailey, the football team is they're going to mentor those young men. They're going to do the football camp. They're going to invest in giving back and let them be an incentive for somebody else to come out and then come to ABC, which brings us today. I want to welcome to the show Coach Ashton Bailey, assistant head football coach at Arkansas Baptist College, and leads the recruiting charge. Just doing a marvelous job. And a couple weeks ago, we went by Pine Bluff High School to see Coach Michael Williams, and we were there visiting. And man, I'm working on a First and 45 piece right now. And talking about how Arkansas has lost so many potential great high school players, because of this homicidal virus that continues to spread. Coach Michael Williams, welcome to the show. Appreciate you being with us tonight. Enjoyed you having us at your school last week, man. Proud of things you're doing. proud of the things you're doing, and just wanted to have you on the show and tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been at Pine Bluff.
It's a pleasure, Dr. Hill, man. I appreciate you. I appreciate Coach Bailey for having me on. I'm a hometown boy at Pine Bluff, born native, but I left around 2002, headed to Dallas, Texas. Went to college at Paul Quinn College and played football there. HBCU in Dallas, Texas, and enjoyed my time there with Archie Cooley was my head coach.
Yep.
While I was there, played 3 years of football, 2 years of baseball, and what brought me back here was in 2005. My grandmother had a heart attack, and I kind of stayed a year. A year later, she died, and I went back to Dallas and never turned around again. I graduated in 2008 with a biology degree with a minor in chemistry. I started immediately working at Frito. Well, actually, I didn't work at Frito. I actually went to chiropractic school in Houston, Pasadena, and transferred here back to Dallas and Parker chiropractic, but then got a job at Frito-Lay working as a chemist, and worked at Mary Kay as a chemist as well. But all the while, it wasn't my calling. My calling is coaching. And so I went on and followed my calling in 2009, 2013, got an official job. I volunteered for a little while, got an official job at W.T. White High School in Dallas, worked there for a while. From there, I went to work at Duncanville in 2017, worked there for about 4 years, got a chance to
work with Coach Samples.
Coach Samples, that's my guy, the most winning coach, black coach in Texas. Yes, sir. I worked for him for 4 years. I actually played against him for 4 years when I was at W.T. White. He was at Skyline, and then got a chance to work for him.
Yeah, right. Well, that's good, man. That's just, and so how many? What year was this make you at Pine Bluff?
Well, this would be this going into my 4th year at Pine Bluff. I came here, as a matter of fact, about this time, about 3 years ago. So this going into my 4th year at Pine Bluff.
Well, the reason you're on the show tonight, we do this every Tuesday night, and as what we do at Arkansas Baptist College is that young people who are looking for an opportunity, and I say with NIL now, with transfer portal now, you can go anywhere you want to, you just need a start, and so that's what we offer: access, opportunities. And relationships. And, I remember Michael Dyer came to Arkansas Baptist College. He had some challenges. We got him graduated. And I called Coach, I called Louisville to Coach Charlie up there and got him over there. And so that's what we enjoy doing. But the reason I have you here tonight, I've been looking at the numbers and seeing how many the young kids are not playing football, and for reasons, we're in juvenile and they can't play, and then death. And I said in prison has really decreased the population of prospective student athletes, not only in Arkansas, but in the entire United States. But I want you to speak to one particular person tonight, because I saw a picture of him and his mother, and share how special Kendall was and how the situation of this homicide virus changed his life.
Well, Kendall Burton is one of the major, I guess I would say, pillars now, because he's a pillar in our community and is a pillar in our football program. Kendall was a great young man. He didn't have any of those bad issues outside of school. He had good grades. He was a rising star. Kendall, unfortunately, got gunned down. According to police, it was actually a mistaken identity. They were looking for somebody else, and they actually end up killing him. Kendall is one of those kids where, we call him the coach's son, because he was always at the field house. That's something that I major in, is making kids stay at the field house as long as possible, and hopefully when they leave us, they too tired to do anything. But this situation wasn't that situation. Kendall was a great young man. Kendall life cut so short, and this would be his senior year coming up this year.
And he from what my deal, he was a baller, wasn't he?
He was a baller. You can actually go on Huddle and watch his 10th grade year. He clowned. We made it to the semifinals. He was one of the key pieces to that.
And that's my point. Just projecting based off your past evaluation of talent. I mean, I know you've seen, that's how I met Coach Samples. I recruited one of his top linebackers at Lincoln, and then brought him up when I was recruiting at Arkansas. And so I was always over. I actually signed a young man who's passed now, Clarence Fitzgerald, who played for him at Lincoln. So I signed him, because he was a track athlete.
Oh, wow.
Athlete too, one of the fastest guys in there. Ran he won the 200 meter and 4As. So that's how I know Samples and Dallas. But speak of this, and this is one of my next edition is coming out. Kendall would have been a highly recruited guy coming out this year in high school had he not been in and got crossed up in that gunfire. Is that right?
Definitely. Kendall is of course I have a receiver this year. He's got about 16 offers. His name is Quinn Roy. Well, that actually would have been Kendall instead. And not necessarily instead, but it would have been Kendall and then Quentin.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and so I'm looking at that, and when I look at this, I don't know if you realize, and I'm trying to get the numbers from the Department of Health, but from 2000 to 2023, the two counties that had the most death in the state of Arkansas for black males, were Pulaski County and Jefferson County. Yeah. In this century alone, from 20, I don't have the 24 numbers now, so this would, and when I add the 24 numbers, these both would go up into, for Pulaski County, it would be over 1,000. And for Jefferson County, it would be about 350. So you take those two individuals and you look at the numbers in the state who normally, prior to this homicide epidemic that's now being passed through our communities, I'm willing to guess based on numbers, and that's what I'm running a little still studies off of, is that about 3 to 4% of that population would have been student athletes based on the numbers. And so that is, when you look at now, looking at where the Razorbacks, where they stand, where how for winning percentages look like we're competing against Vanderbilt because our numbers are not there, because our state is not producing. Hey, Barry Switzer used to live in Pine Bluff. You remember all the athletes that were going straight to Pine Bluff from up there? Yeah. And the numbers were there. What I'm saying, this homicide virus has so strategically taken us out, because we're in the graves and we're in the prisons, so we're not in college. Then that leads me to the fact that since 1976, the number of black men in college is the lowest since 1976. So why is that? You know why? It correlates with the number of deaths and black men going to prison. The prison population is growing while the college population is going down. And so we have to reverse that trend. And I love what they have going on in Pine Bluff now with the GIV and all the things now, because y'all haven't had a homicide in the juveniles in over a year. And so that's why, because you've been intentional. And I want to applaud you for that. And I know you got some other things going on with Kendall and his family. Speak to that with the foundation and things, as you said, he's been a pillar, because that's what we've done with Derek here. And that's what First and 45 came out of Derek Olivier's death. So I'm proud to see you all remembering Kendall like that.
So one thing that we definitely want to do. So what I did is every summer since I got here, I hosted a youth camp. Last year was my third annual youth camp, and that right there mixed with Kendall's death, I decided to connect both of them together. I usually host about 350 kids every summer. Well, last summer I said, you know what? Let's not make this about necessarily just Pine Bluff High. Let's make this about Kendall as well, because the youth of today need to know about what happened with this kid and know what's going on. So therefore, with that, we mixed that with the Kendall Burton Foundation that we're raising money for every year. And what we want to do is not necessarily just do a scholarship fund, because the scholarship fund is cool. Everybody do a scholarship fund, but what we want to do is keep his memory alive. alive by that Kendall Burton Foundation. They fund the youth camp, which have his T-shirts with whatever emblem that we decide. Last year we had his football picture on there, or whatever emblem decide this year, and so the kids can have a shirt to take with them. That helps him, not only us, but it helps his mom to see his picture, see his face again. When you see them youth walking around, you have his picture on this shirt. It actually helps to keep in mind what could have been and what you should be as the youth.
Hey man, that's great. And we're getting ready to go into break. And here's what I want to let you know. Every time y'all have something, make sure you let me know. I'm putting me in the game. I'm supporting that. I appreciate what you're doing. Hey, yes, stay tuned. We're going to hear from Coach Bailey because we have some news that we're trying to do from the Derek Olivier Research Institute. And I know Miss Mother Olivier, Father Joe, they got an event coming on in June. I'm planning on going down there to help them with their fundraiser. I know Bishop, I know you and y'all want some of that gumbo down there from Mama Olivier down there.
I was going to say, the only way we're getting it is if you and I go down.
Hey, stay tuned for the fourth quarter. We got Coach Bailey on deck. Don't go nowhere. We'll be right back.
Black men have so many different problems, so many different issues. Homicide rate, high incarceration rate, fatherless homes. What is America going to do about it?
What are we going to do about it? Yeah, what are we going to do about it? When I say we, I'm talking to black men. I'm asking us, what are we going to do about issues that negatively impact black men and boys to a greater degree than other demographics? Everybody knows about the homicide epidemic in this country regarding black men and boys. While comprising only 6% of the nation's population, will account for 50% of the nation's homicide victims. So what are we going to do about it? Here's another disturbing reality. While making up only 6% of the nation's population, we're about 40% of the nation's prison population. In fact, 1 in 3 black males are projected to go to jail in their lifetime. Again, I ask, what are we going to do about it? Collectively, black men have the means to solve these problems. We just don't have the mind to do so. And means without the mind.
And we're back with First and 45. Man, the third quarter was amazing. We got we got 3 coaches, 2 preachers, and 3 coaches on deck tonight, and can't wait to hear from Coach Bailey. Coach.
Yeah, I tell you, we just had another young man at Henderson State from our hometown. I don't know if y'all saw this. He went home. He was supposed to be coming back, and he was killed while he was home on break. So he's supposed to be back, and so that happens on frequently,
too often.
And so that's what I want, and I want to make this real and why we have this show, because as Coach Williams was talking about, keeping Kendall's name alive, that's what I try to do with First and 45 with Derek, to keep his name alive. But there are others, and to my deal, what would happen in my mind if the parents or the families of the deceased from gun violence showed up on Washington, D.C. for a movement, the way the civil rights movement was? If we want to change the things that are going on, it's going to take something that transformational. The civil rights laws were passed not because people were passive. It's because of people who were allowed dogs to bite them, for police to beat them. They sacrifice for others. This is not going to change if we keep the status quo. It's going to take something radical, because that's what I want Coach Bailey to talk about. Guys, you may not know this, but since he's been there talking about going home, of course we had Derek, but I want him to name the players. Now I want y'all to listen to this, that have been murdered when they went home from school. All right, Derek, we've been fortunate and not fortunate to Mama Olivier and Papa Joe, but when you realize that the death sentence that goes to people when they go home, and listen, we've paid for funerals, and we both He and I have spoken at these at these services. But welcome to the show, Coach Bailey, and appreciate you being here. And I know one that really stuck to your heart was from South Louisiana as well. But I want you to call out the names of the individuals so people will know how regularly this happens and how these deaths impacted your life when you got that call.
Okay. First of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. Well, like Doc said, the young men that we've lost while we had them here in our program, we've had Joshua Brown, Calvin Watson, Prince, young man. He came over here from Nigeria. Aaron Wright, he was from South Louisiana, Lafayette, Louisiana. Marquavis Caldwell from Farmerville, Louisiana. Javier Morales, he was from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Kevin Williams, he's from Chattanooga, Tennessee. And then Thaddeus Waters from Convent, Louisiana. Yes,
so kind of tell how that call impacted you when it happened, because I know Thaddeus went home for Christmas, right? And I think
yes,
that was how that happens with a situation. And as you gather these information, was there a pattern that started to take place about the kids which, and I know one is not even on the young man from Atlanta, that when he wasn't a football player, but Coach Dr. Lee had brought him on there because we went and did his funeral, and so he wasn't a football player, but that was another kid to the deal that, that went home. And I'm speaking about this. He went home and was, listen, I remember he was on the street and he was sitting there talking to a gang of people, and he had just got back from Arkansas Baptist College, and they gunned him down right there at the stop sign because, because this happens more frequently than not.
Okay. Yeah, you're talking about what the process, how you go through, and like with the situation with that is, it was the night before Christmas. Okay, in 2018, the night before Christmas, it was he went to a bonfire, and he never thought anything was wrong. Just from my knowledge, like Coach Williams said, from my knowledge, he wasn't the target. And I think it just happened to be wrong place, wrong time type thing. But that young man, as far as who he was first, then I kind of talked to you about how I felt. That is, to me, he was a jewel. He was full of life, and all of our young men that we've lost, they've all been full of life. But Thaddeus was so special to me because he played for me. He was one of the first young men that played defensive back the first year I moved over to defense, and Thaddeus, like I say, he was one of those people you couldn't tell him anything. You couldn't tell him he couldn't do anything. He was going to show you, he was going to prove you wrong. And so he was just a full of life, always a comedian, always coming about office, messing with the coaches, talking about my accent. I say, man, wait a minute, your accent worse than mine. You from South Louisiana, I can't understand what you're saying. And but it was so surreal to me. The night before, how sometimes you get tired, you shut your phone down a little bit early. And what I did, I shut my phone down a little bit early that night. Then I woke up to a text from his cousin, Rayshawn Preston. We call him Shiny. Shiny sends me a message, Coach, can you talk? And that was at about, I think, 11 o'clock the night before, and I had missed it. And I saw it about 7 or 8 the next morning. And I said, hey, what's wrong? He said, Coach, call me. And I said, what's wrong? He said, it's Thaddeus. I said, what do you mean? He said, he's gone. I said, what do you mean he's gone? And so I quickly called him. I said, what do you mean? And from that moment, when I picked the phone up, he just started crying. And then from that moment, I knew. And it kind of had started a little trauma for me, because I was actually telling another one of our young men from Belle Chase, Louisiana. He called me today, and he called me, and I answered it so quickly, but I was hesitant when I answered the phone. Mm-hmm. He said, Coach, you hear me? I said, yeah, I hear you. I said, but I've grown to kind of just pause to get myself ready, because I just don't know what I'm going to hear. And sometimes when they leave in our program, whether it's spring break, fall break, whatever break it may be,
they get that call.
Yeah, I'm just weird because we may get a call at any time, and so and he was just calling to check on me, and I was so scared because we have 3 young men from Belle Chase, and I just didn't know what that call may be, and so that is kind of the trauma that has happened for me, I'm just kind of always scared to answer the phone now.
Right. Well, I mean, well, Drew, that's kind of like the trauma that's in our neighborhoods that we're talking about. For Pastor Fred, that's like the post-traumatic stress trauma, that we have to find a way. So just imagine in a situation of the community that's seeing that day-to-day trauma, how these individuals, and just thinking about when you look here and you see, look, and I mentioned this last week, in the top counties, I'm just going to mention, because it's important to bring this up, in the top counties in the state of Arkansas, from the Department of Health vital records, Pulaski County, all right, from 2020, I haven't put 24 in there, 987 black males murdered. Jefferson County, 339 black males murdered. Clinton County, 158 black males murdered. Mississippi County, 132 black males murdered. Phillips County, 114 black males murdered. St. Francis County, 72 black males murdered. Union County, 72. So now you go back and look and you start talking about per week through the century. Okay. All right. How many that is, each week when you start counting, how that to look at, then 52 weeks in a year. So you start looking, that becomes a common occurrence that's happening on the regular.
Right.
And so what you're saying, Ashton, and I know Coach William, you just mentioned one, but there's been more than one now. And so we get these calls 30 times a day in the United States of America that this call happens that Coach Bailey was just talking about. All right. So a mother and many times gets that call that somebody's saying your child has been murdered. I know what you're talking about, Coach Bailey, because sometimes, just like the young man that was shot in Conway, sometimes I worry about getting information from myself. Actually, when he was at Los Angeles, I took him out and showed him because I recruited there. I said, "Now this is South Central." All right, so there are some places that you want. You have to be careful about where you find yourself, and so those are things you navigate. But these instances and these people, they're just someplace going out and then bonfire, and their lives to take. That's guys. That can't happen. We can't allow that to happen. Well, I hear the music. We got to go. We're going to have you guys back on the regular. We appreciate what you're doing, Coach William. You put me in the game down there for Kendall, and we'll continue to keep sending. Anybody need opportunity, we got them at Arkansas Baptist College. Thank y'all for being with us, Coach Bailey. Hey, Pastor Drew, Coach Fitz, Bishop, will you close out in a word of prayer?
Yes, God, we thank you for these coaches that have come and shared their hearts, and thank you for the work that they're doing in serving the schools, the community, and saving the lives of our black boys. We pray, God, that you help us all. We pray, lift up our city and our nation. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen.